The Edmonton Oilers are going back to the Stanley Cup Final for the second straight year against the Florida Panthers, and that calls for a Saturday bonus episode.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this bonus Saturday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone that's taken the time on the weekend to make Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network where we've got your team covered every day. So on today's show, we have big picture, big themes, and we're going to have a ton of preview stuff between now and the start of this series. We're planning on a two-part preview, Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers and I, of doing a narratives and storylines, and then more of a hockey strategy, tactics, matchups episode. So stay tuned for that. That's coming sometime early next week. But on today's show, we're going to unpack a few different things. Number one, we're going to talk about the art of the rematch. Rematches in contemporary sports history, rematches in contemporary pop culture, why rematches mean so much and why they hold such a special place in the canon when we're talking about sports history. Then we're going to pivot to talking mostly about the feeling, the energy going into this series around the Oilers. And then we'll tie a bow on this episode by giving you the cliff notes, the elevator pitch, if you will, as to why I think the Oilers are better prepared this year than they were last year. So to start things out, we love a good narrative in the sports world. We try and find patterns, common threads to tug on, to build plot lines. If guys go first and second in a draft, like Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel, they're linked forever. Their careers will always be compared against each other. If you play a team in a conference final or a Stanley Cup final a couple times, that becomes part of the lore. Those matchups, I think about all of those battles between the LA Kings and the Chicago Blackhawks at the early part of the 2010s, where those were the two teams consistently vying to represent the Western Conference in the Stanley Cup Final. And now we sit here for the first time since 2008, 2009, where we're going to have a rematch of the same two teams from the Stanley Cup Final. In 2008, the Red Wings won the Stanley Cup. In 2009, the Pittsburgh Penguins got their lick back. They won the Stanley Cup. And these types of moments are far and few between on a few different levels. Number one, it's hard to get here. And I'm going to rattle off a bunch of contemporary, not even contemporary, just great historical rivalry moments where teams have had these great rematches. And when you have a Stanley Cup final, the way the Oilers and Panthers did last year, you are inherently going to be tied together in perpetuity. The Panthers going out to a 3-0 series lead. The Oilers storming back as furiously as you can to force a Game 7. A Game 7 coming down to the last 10 minutes. Furious scrambles. Superstar players playing 6 out of 10 minutes trying to manifest a game-tying goal. And you have one of the great contemporary Stanley Cup finals between two very deserving teams. And all that represents. And I don't want to step too much on the second segment because I want to get even more meta in talking about what it means, the psychology, the emotions, but just think about the journey to get back to where we are right now on Saturday, May 31st. The fact that the Oilers went through the regular season they did, the fact the Panthers went through the regular season they did, and having those types of seasons, and I think to some extent you can lump the Panthers and Oilers together in the respect that down the backstretch of the regular season, there was clearly a conscientious effort to slow things down, to be a bit more worried about the playoffs than regular season form. Matthew Tkachuk sitting out every game post Four Nations face-off. The Oilers load managing all of their various players down the backstretch of March and into April, where guys with nagging injuries were shut down to get as healthy as they could. Evander Kane comes off of LTIR. Same thing for John Klingberg. And then you got to go through 3 playoff series to get here. And that's what makes the rivalry, and frankly, it is a rivalry now, the rematch so compelling, especially being that it's in the playoffs, number one. Number two, These are non-conference opponents. That means the only way they can play each other in the playoffs is in the Stanley Cup Final again. They only play each other in the regular season twice. And then you start to build out the math. Well, if the Panthers need to win 3 series and the Oilers need to win 3 series, the probability of them meeting 2 years in a row is pretty unlikely. To have teams win 12 total playoff series, because 6 each year, just to have a rematch is really, really improbable. It's very, very statistically unlikely. Of course, that doesn't account for weighting, the Oilers being better than the Kings, the Panthers being better than Carolina, or the Lightning, or what have you. But you get what I'm saying here. Very unlikely to have this happen. And some of these great rematches didn't live up to the hype. But when you think about the great rematches, the one I talked about pretty extensively on yesterday's Friday show and the Everydayers, I apologize for repeating myself, but the Red Sox and Yankees in 03-04 kind of felt like the center of the universe. The simple matter of the fact that the Red Sox had gone 86 years without winning the World Series, the fact that they came back from 3 games to none down against the Yankees, they went into the Bronx, the old Yankee Stadium, and they hung a 10 spot on the Yankees to go to the World Series and then subsequently went on to win the World Series. That's how those types of exorcisms have to happen. The fact that the Cubs wasn't a rematch, but the fact that the Cubs had to go down in the World Series, they have the rain delay, the Rajai Davis home run, then the Cubs come back. David Ross, last game in baseball, hits the home run, gets them back in the game. You think about how these moments come together. And in the annals of sports history, Red Wings Penguins is the most contemporary for the NHL. Of course, the Islanders and the Oilers back in the early 80s. Hand up, I was not there. I was not alive in 1983 and 1984. But I understand the historical context, the Oilers winning 3 straight, and then the Islanders win 4 straight. The Islanders say, and I forget what documentary it was. No, it was the 30 for 30 about John Spano, the Islanders owner who had no money. But one of the build-up points in that documentary before it gets to John Spano is talking about how great the Islanders were in the 80s. And they talk about how the last time the Oilers won the cup, the third time, the one time they lost, the time the Islanders lost to the Oilers, that a couple of the Islanders walked by the Oilers dressing room, and it was just a bunch of dudes with ice on their bodies, holding open beers. It wasn't rowdy. It was just kind of business as normal. And the Islanders kind of took something from that. And then the next year, the Islanders, of course, would go on to win their first of 4 straight Stanley Cups, which is the contemporary record. And then when we talk about the other ones, I mentioned Yankees Red Sox 03-04. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, Ali's first loss in 1975. Ali gets him back the following year, the second time not for the title. Celtics and Lakers in 84-85. The Celtics win the first time, and then the Lakers win the second time. The Lakers beat the Celtics in the finals for the first time after all those times back in the 70s and 60s where Bill Russell beat Wilt. You could keep going on and on. The Warriors and the Cavs, 2015, 2016, 2015, the Golden State wins. 2016, LeBron brings them back from 3-1 down. They win the chip. The Warriors have to respond to that by going to get Kevin Durant. Of course, Chiefs Eagles very recently in the NFL. That's 2 years apart, but a contemporary rematch for sure. And then the last one, of course. I had to get this in here. Rocky 1, Rocky 2. Rocky Balboa versus Apollo Creed, two of the great boxing matches ever committed to cinema. And you think about the feelings and that animosity. And I'm going to set the table for this next segment with this point. You have worked your entire life to get here. You are 4 wins away, in this case, when we're talking about hockey, from a life's dream. The only thing that is standing in front of you is that guy across from you. You either have what you want in this life or the reason that you don't. And if you're the Oilers coming into this series, you have got to be licking your chops at the opportunity to get your lick back. And I'm going to tell you why coming up next on Locked On Oilers. Those feelings, they're very, very real. The NBA and NHL playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and all-time moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot, a power play goal, or a mind-blowing save, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before and after puck drop and tip-off, and well after the game starts. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you are in on the Knicks forcing a game 7 and you want to ride with Jalen Brunson, points and assists, maybe you think the Pacers are going to close this out. Tyrese Halliburton's due for a bounce back after a pretty rough game 5. You go with points, rebounds, assists for Tyrese Halliburton. Or if you just want to ride with the side, maybe the over, there are so many options. And if you're a new FanDuel customer, there's never been a better time to sign up, because if you hit that first $5 bet, you'll win $200 in free bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this bonus Saturday edition of Locked On Oilers. And let me tell you real quick, I spent the entirety of my workday on Friday just giggling to myself, like not being the LeBron meme, smiling. I can't believe this is my life. It's crazy that we're sitting here and we're going to run this back again. And that feeling is so hard to describe. And one of my friends on Twitter, Oily Gifts, if you're familiar, shared the clip of after Game 7 last year, Leon in the tunnel after the game talking about how much this means, how much it meant, the opportunity to play for the Stanley Cup. And Leon said, quote, "There is not a single player in the entire NHL who wants to win the Stanley Cup more than him." And he was talking about Connor McDavid. And I am a sucker for a good sports narrative, and the prodigal franchise savior who has felt the burden of an entire franchise, a dormant franchise that was once prodigious, storming out and finding himself and elevating the team is something that's just frankly beautiful. You know, these franchise shifting players only come around once every 10 to 15 years, if that. You know, hockey, we had a little glut of them in the mid 2010s. I think you could classify Nathan McKinnon and Austin Matthews as franchise altering players. But for the most part, we're talking Sid, we're talking Connor, Mario, we're talking Wayne. And when you get to that point, we're talking about 1/1,000,000th of a percent of chance of being as good at hockey as Connor McDavid is, if not greater than that, frankly. And this is someone from 5 years old has understood that he was different from everyone else and felt not just a obligation, but a personal responsibility to be as good at this game as he possibly can. And that sets such a high standard and sets such a goal oriented space for everyone around him, because you watch him bust his butt shift after shift after shift. And how are you going to be the guy that doesn't live up to that mentality? It's an infectious mindset. And frankly, I know he doesn't have the reputation of being the most rah, chest pounding, fire the guys up type of leader. But when you have a guy that is that good and that driven, that sets a tone. It's why, as much as I think you don't need to be the best player on your team to be the captain, it certainly helps, because for all of the bluster, all of the talking, at a certain point in a game, if your best player is also your leader and he can go out there and make a play to swing a game and he doesn't need to rely on a speech and trying to goad performances out of guys, that is infinitely more impactful than the Gatorade throwing in the locker room between periods. Because when Connor goes over those boards, he is going out there with the intent that he is going to make something happen. And all of that sets a tone. It sets an organizational tone, and it makes everybody else by osmosis need to be better. And that's just the baseline here. We're not even really scratching the surface. I could do an entire hour talking about myth making in sports because I find it so fascinating. You think about Connor McDavid to this point. You think about that rookie season where he breaks his collarbone. You think about them going to the playoffs the next year, the big signings, they trade for Cam Talbot, they sign Milan Lucic, they go to the second round of the playoffs, they lose to the Ducks. They don't get back to the playoffs for 3 years. You have effectively spent the first 4 or 5 years of Connor McDavid's career just trying to figure out how to build a team. You get to 2020, you lose in that play-in round in the bubble. The next year you come back, you lose to the Jets in the first round. After smoking the Jets in the regular season, You come back to the playoffs first time in 4 years, get absolutely smoked. Then you start to make progress. You sign Zach Hyman, you trade for Matthias Ekholm, you luck into Stuart Skinner, and you start to make progress. And then last year was the first time the full proof of concept for this Oilers team comes together. You have the two superstars, Connor and Leon. You have the transcendent first pair between Ekholm and Bouchard that elevates the entire team. You have passable, and I'm using that very loosely, goaltending in Stuart Skinner. No Mikko Koiskinen, no Mike Smith, no Jack Campbell. You have passable NHL goaltending in the playoffs. You have quality, exciting depth from guys like Dylan Holloway, from guys like Ryan McLeod. You get contributions from your deadline acquisition, Adam Henrique. You get a nice moment or two out of Matthias Janmark. Connor Brown, who has a miserable first season as an Oiler, puts together a really strong playoff run. And all of that work gets you to a best of 7 series. And the mental fortitude for the Oilers to be able to come back from 3 games to none, just to force a game 7, is the type of character that you can't fake, you can't manufacture. And you watch really good teams wilt in those types of situations where you saw the Stars give in to the frustration, the stupid penalties, the bad defense. You saw Pete DeBoer genuinely lose it in pulling his best player, Jake Ottinger, less than 10 minutes into that game. These high pressure, high stakes environments, they change you as a person. And I always go back to the quote from Dodgeball where I forget which of the guys on the commentary team in Dodgeball says it, but I'm pretty sure the Gary Cole says something along the lines of Dodgeball doesn't make character, it reveals it. And that's how I feel about these high leverage, high pressure situations in hockey. You saw Connor, Leon, Evan Bouchard, Zach Hyman, and Matthias Ekholm in the final 10 minutes of that game 7 against the Panthers. Out there pretty much every third shift, pushing as hard as they feasibly can. And that's what I leave you with. And as we wrap up this final segment, and yes, I am a movie guy. Yes, I'm about to quote Friday Night Lights, the Billy Bob Thornton movie, which has aged very well, by the way. I know the TV show is one of the best TV shows like ever, so don't take me gassing up the movie as me not liking the show. I love the show. Frankly, I've been looking for a box set of it on DVD or Blu-ray on eBay for the last few weeks at a reasonable price point so I can have it in my collection for those times I do need it. But there's no shame in losing, but you owe it to yourself, your teammates, and the people that care about you to do everything you can. That's what you mean by being perfect. It's not about winning. It is about giving everything you possibly can because there's going to come a time in every single person's life, no matter how hard they try, where they're going to lose. But it's important that in those moments, you don't go outside of yourself and you don't lose who you are. Because you staying true to yourself, you playing as hard as you can for the people around you, that's what makes a special team. And this Oilers team has shown an incredible amount of resilience. And this Oilers team, this playoff run, has shown a remarkable amount of professionalism in taking the punches as they come, adapting with each round to meet what their opponents want to do to get this opportunity. And you have spent your entire life as a hockey player to get to this moment. Anybody who has ever picked up a stick, laced up a pair of skates, man, woman, boy, girl, you have dreamed of the opportunity of holding that Stanley Cup over your head. You have dreamed of how light it feels. It looks heavy. You win that thing, it is weightless. That is what is in front of you right now. The manifestation of a life's work is 4 wins away. We are going to take our second and final break on this bonus edition of Locked On Oilers, where we've got your team covered every day. When we come back, I'm going to give you the case for optimism going into the Stanley Cup Final against the Florida Panthers. Be right back. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Saturday edition of Locked On Oilers. And when you have these layoffs between series, and I do think it's a good thing, especially considering both these series went short, I think it's a good thing for both of these teams to get a hard reset. So, in terms of talking about why you should believe, number one, as good as the Panthers have been in the Eastern Conference, I think the teams the Oilers have beat along the way, especially in the second and third round, are significantly better than what Florida's had in front of them. I've been very adamant that as long as Florida got past Tampa Bay in the first round, they were assuredly going to make the Stanley Cup final. I was very confident that whoever won the Battle of Florida in the first round was going to represent the Eastern Conference. I mean, hand up, I did pick Tampa Bay to win because I ate the cheese on Jake Gensel, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Yanni Gourde going back. I felt that Florida would hit a physical wall at some point. They would manifest going to two straight Stanley Cup finals, and Tampa Bay, who had gone out in the first round a couple years in a row, would have a little bit more juice left. But alas, here we are again with this rematch on the horizon. So, number one, the Oilers' remaking of their defense in the last year is the single biggest reason why I feel more confident. Last year, it was going to be a lot more withstand, counterattack, and then special teams. Special teams last year were essential. The Oilers' power play was great, and their penalty kill was historically great. And this year, it's a different recipe. And number one, most importantly, and I just said it, having John Klingberg, having Jake Wallman, and most importantly, having Darnell Nurse not be an active liability, all in conjunction with each other, is a massive relief. You have gotten tremendous results out of the Evan Bouchard, Brett Kulak pair that I would like to see reunited. I understand that Chris Knobloch's preference is to keep Bouchard with Ekholm together because that's a comfort thing for both them and him. But you saw Brett Kulak play his weakest game of the postseason so far, playing mostly away from Bouchard in Game 5 against the Stars. But this defense is so much better. There's no CC, there's no Desharnais, there's no Darnell Nurse being the worst player on the ice. This 1-6 is as good as any. I would dare to say it's as good, if not better, than Florida's, because frankly, I think Evan Bouchard is better than anyone on the Panthers. Frankly, I think Matthias Ekholm is probably, if he's healthy, and we know he's not 100%, but I think Matthias Ekholm is capable of being just as good as Gus Forsling, and I think he's better flat out than Seth Jones. I think the defense being so much more oriented towards transition hockey, moving the puck, not absorbing pressure, has put them in a position to be so much better equipped. Because as we know, Florida runs the single most aggressive forecheck in the entire NHL. They're going to send two guys at the puck pretty much the entire game. They're going to wear you down and try and force you into mistakes. And you saw that happen time and time again in the Stanley Cup Final last year, where where Edmonton was not able to break the puck out. And when you have those sustained runs of offensive zone time, even if you're not scoring, you have the opportunity to draw a power play. You have the opportunity to wear down the defense, to wear down the goalie, and that accumulates over the course of a series. And number two, the fact that the Oilers were able to get here, avoiding going 7 games in any of their playoff series. I know they beat Dallas in 6, they beat LA in 5 last year, but saving those playoff games does matter. The miles accumulate. You know, you joke about aging in dog years. Stanley Cup playoff games age you in dog years, and the Oilers being healthy-ish. I know Zach Hyman is brutal because he's such an effective player, especially at what he does at the net front as a forechecker, was leading the entire playoffs in hits, had a chance to set the record for most hits by any player in a playoffs. I believe he does have the Oilers record for hits in a postseason, and it's crazy to say about a guy who, you know, played all of 6 games in the Kings series, 5 games in the Vegas series, and then four games in the Dallas series before breaking his wrist. So it's crazy he was able to put up that volume of hits in such short order. Wow. Words are hard. I'm tired. It's been a long day. I'm still kind of juiced up from last night, though, and that's going to carry me through the final 5 minutes of this episode. But number 3, home ice advantage won't matter. And home ice materially is mattering less and less year over year. But in a series like this, where Chris Knobloch is going to do everything in his power to get McDavid away from Barkov and have that happen as much as 4 times, that will make a difference. I'm not inclined to say if the Oilers have home ice last year, they win that series, but it certainly wouldn't have hurt. Having the ability to play matchups, having the ability to have last change more than the other team over the course of a best of 7, that does begin to accumulate. And look, I'm not going into this series expecting the Oilers to win. I think they are significantly better equipped to win. I think last year's experience helps a lot. I think the rallying around this moment on a bunch of different levels, the fact Zach Hyman can't play, you saw the guys FaceTiming him in the locker room after the game. If you follow the Oilers on social, you have the fact that they don't know if they're ever going to have this opportunity again. Cinderella does not go back to the ball. The fact that the Oilers are here again isn't a miracle, but it is very, very unlikely. And you don't know how many chances you're going to get at this. Henrik Lundqvist only went to a Stanley Cup Final once. Joe Thornton only went to a Stanley Cup Final once. Dan Marino only went to a Super Bowl once. You only get so many of these chances in your life. Do not leave anything out there that you are going to feel bad about. Going back to what I had said in that second segment, the idea, did you do everything you could to live in that moment, to play at the best of your ability so that you can look your teammates, your family, your friends, your community in the eye and know you did everything you could? If you do that, there's no shaming in losing, but you didn't come all this way to lose. You might as well win. Have this moment mean something. It's okay to play with emotions. It's okay to understand the gravity of this situation. You got to be within yourself. Like I said, everybody is going to have a time in their life where they push as hard as they possibly can and they lose. That's just the nature of life. Sometimes life is going to kick you in the chin and you just got to take it. The Oilers have a second chance, and life is not very inclined to give second chances. You do not know if you will ever have this opportunity again. Take advantage of it while it's here, because the Panthers are on the great run of this decade, I should say. To go to 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals is nothing short of remarkable. And I know the Lightning did it not too long ago as well. The Oilers have the capacity here to put themselves right there with the defining teams of this era, with the Golden Knights, with the Avalanche, with the Panthers, with the Lightning, should they be able to win this championship. And most importantly, to solidify Connor McDavid as the great player of his era. Even though he's already that, he needs the cup to do that and to wake the echoes, to allude to Notre Dame, to stir the echoes, to wake the echoes, because the Oilers are a great franchise and the dog days are over, but you win a championship, they are absolutely over. That'll do it for today's bonus edition of Locked On Oilers. Please be so kind as to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple or Spotify, take that extra second, leave the show a 5-star review. If you're over on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment. What is making the Stanley Cup Final mean to you? I know this means a lot to me. I'm very grateful the Oilers are here again, and I'd love to share some good anecdotes if anybody has something particularly meaningful they wanted to say. So let me know down low. I will talk to you guys on Monday, most likely with Armando Velez for the first part of a crossover preview edition ahead of the Stanley Cup Final. I will talk to you guys then. Until then, let's go Oilers.